After 1 year of racing, it all comes down to this. We are at the very end of this season. There are 3 races to go. We have just 3 more weeks of racing. This is the last weekend where we are not going to have a race, and it will be awesome. Because although McLaren is already the champion for next year, there are still a lot of places to be disputed. Some of them are not being noticed, and I'm going to talk about them today. And that is the fight for the last positions of best of the rest. The 5th place is already more or less secured by Williams, although it's not at all close, but the others are still not. The 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th place are still up for grabs, and unfortunately for Alpine, the 10th place seems to be theirs. And so there are 5 teams that are still in contention for that 5th place. It is Williams, we have then the Saubers, the Aston Martin, the RBs, and last but not least, the Haas. So let's start by the most likely of them all, the Williams. Williams has been one of my favorite teams, and one of those that in the last few years I've been saying that could be the next powerhouse coming out of the midfield, and I'm starting to believe that I was right when I said that. Since the signing of James Vowles as team principal, that team has been completely reformed from top to the bottom. They had a very old school way of doing things, and it was so bad that basically a single sheet of Excel was all that they needed, or that they used to perform in a Formula 1 World Championship, which is crazy to think about. Now, 2 years later, and with Sainz joining the team alongside Albon, they've been absolutely amazing. The 2025 car was much better than anyone would have expected. Even the team was pleasantly surprised by the car they had built, and so it was a very good base for the year, and they started getting a lot of good results, except for Sainz because it took a little more time getting used to the car, but Albon started right away taking a lot of points, and he's still inside the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship. And this becomes all the more impressive when you take into account that the Williams have stopped their development a long time ago. The team is the one that brought the least amount of performance upgrades throughout the whole year, which is insane that the car performs so well, bringing so little upgrades. There are other teams that brought much more upgrades and that are still behind them. And I did get kind of scared when they started getting caught by the other teams, but that podium from Sainz in Baku really almost sealed the deal. They are now sitting up in 5th and on top of the Racing Bulls by 30 points and looking pretty to take 5th place. And speaking of which, the Racing Bulls are the next team. They were also one of the teams that impressed me the most this year because once again, the base car they brought for 2025 is just so good. I don't care if they have parts from the Red Bull car or something, they still had a very good car, and I was very impressed, especially at the beginning of the season by Hadjar, because the first race in Australia was a disaster, but after that it was so good, and he still got a podium this year in the Dutch Grand Prix. And just like their rivals at Williams, they are the second team with the least amount of performance upgrades throughout the whole season. So that's even more impressive, because just like Williams, they have abandoned the development very early on, they are just focusing on the next year, and they still managed to bring a lot of results. Although I must say I thought they would be closer to Williams, just because it's kind of a feeling of mine that I feel like I always see them in the top 10 in the qualifyings more than the Williams, but somehow they've scored 30 points less than the Williams. So yeah, I'm a bit puzzled by that, but once again, it might be just a thing of a sensation that I had more than a reality, but it's still, they are going for the 6th place in the Constructors, which is a very good result behind a very strong Williams, but their place is not guaranteed because the team behind them is just 10 points away. And for now, that team is the Aston Martins. And this is a tricky one to judge because on paper they are the 3rd team with the most amount of upgrades for performance. So in theory they've spent a lot of resources into this year. But get this, the last time they brought an upgrade package was in Belgium. that's a long time ago, that's since the summer break, and that was precisely the time that they scored the most points. Aston Martin were scoring a lot of points after the Belgian Grand Prix. They even passed the Racing Bulls for 6th place in the championship, but they've then lost it and are now only 2 points away from being caught by Haas. Alonso does what he can and he drags that car to Q3 a lot of times and he tries a lot of things, but he's been unlucky in a few occasions this year, especially in the beginning, and sometimes the strategy of the team doesn't help him, so he isn't able to score more points than he probably should have, and therefore the team can only do so much with the car that they have right now. And as for Lance Stroll, I have to be kind of fair to him because usually I'm a Stroll hater. Just see what he did to Bortoleto in Brazil, just see what he did to Ocon in Austin, and many other occasions that I will not bother to mention here. But this year has been a very good year for Stroll. He is now sitting just a few points behind Alonso, like 6 points behind him, which is very good for Lance. And if you take a look at past years, he's always been with a percentage like 30% of the points of the team. Right now he's sitting at 44%, which is a good season for him. But even with the good season, it's not been enough to sit in front of the Racing Bulls, and right now the Aston Martins have to fight for every last point that they can because they are in a tight spot. The Haas brought a lot of upgrades for performance in Austin, and they have been performing really well lately, as all of us have seen. Or maybe this is just an intentional bottling, since we all know that Adrian Newey is designing next year's car and he wants as much wind tunnel time as possible, so if they end up lower, they get more wind tunnel but less money. But to be honest, who needs money when you have Stroll Daddy? And that brings us to the team with the most momentum in the midfield, the Haas. The Haas has been a team of mixed feelings for me, because in the beginning of the year I thought they were amazing. They had an amazing car that could perform really well. Behrman was really impressive. Ocon was doing good performances too. I remember a very good performance, I believe it was in China on hards by Ocon, which was incredible. And then the car just died. I think it died a little bit. And they kept bringing upgrades for performance. They are the second team with the most amount of upgrades. And still, only in Austin, with the last package that they brought, have they nailed it on the head. Between the Dutch Grand Prix and Austin, the Haas barely has scored any points, but that all changed in Austin when they brought the last package of upgrades and suddenly the car felt alive again, and the drivers felt that they could score points and fight for the big points. And we've seen especially Behrman do that, because Ocon is not having the best of seasons for me. He's had some highlights, of course, but he's not having the most consistent season, especially if we think that he's paired up with a rookie, and right now the rookie is kind of kicking his ass. Which again, it's not that Ocon is having a bad season, but that rookie has just been so impressive, and with a car under him, as I said in the last video, I really thought he could fight for a maybe first or second row of the grid on Q3, because he was just that impressive around Brazil. In the end, he only got P8 in the qualification, but that was still a demonstration that the Haas is good, not only in race pace, but also in qualifying, and that's a key for them to be the team with the most momentum right now in the midfield. They were behind the Saubers like 3 or 4 races ago. They are now past the Saubers, 2 points away from the Astons, and just 12 or 13 away from the 6th place. And this, like Williams, is a team that I think benefited a lot from changing team principal, because since Ayao Komatsu assumed the role of team principal, the team basically has been making a lot of steps forward. And although this year seemed to be a little bit of a bad year for them, they just turned it around mid-season, and right now they are looking for a very good finish in the constructors. And honestly, I kind of get why Haas are trying to get as many points as possible. For a team that is financially so vulnerable, it is very important to get every penny that you can get your hands on, and each place in the Constructors' Championship means a lot of millions flowing into your account. So although more time in the wind tunnel would be great for development, probably the money is more useful to them right now. And speaking of teams that have improved with recent changes, we of course have the Saubers next. With the Audi rebranding from next year onwards, it was a very important year for them. 2024 was completely a year to forget. The start was really bad with all the problems that they had in the pit stops. It was a complete mess, and it genuinely seemed like a team that you didn't want to be in. But somehow they got to 2025 and managed to kind of turn things around. They brought in Mattia Binotto, which is a very experienced team principal. He's been the team principal of Ferrari, he's been an engineer in Formula 1 for many years, and that certainly played a part in their good performances this year. And the other crucial factor here is the lineup, because Bottas is a very good driver, but he's no Hülkenberg in my opinion in terms of what he can give you at this point of his career. Of course, Prime Bottas was very good in the Mercedes, but I also believe that Prime Hülkenberg is just as good as Bottas, if not better. As for Joe, I liked him a lot, but unfortunately for him, I think the team is better off with Bortoleto, which is a rookie, but a Formula 2 champion, a very young and exciting driver that I think is going to go places, because although he only scored 19 points, he did score 19 points in a Sauber, and that has some credit to it, because Hülkenberg scored a lot of points, like 43 of them. But still, a very solid season by the rookie, and I think this was a very good year for Sauber that's going to turn into Audi, because that gives them a lot of momentum and a very good image for next year. It's also important to note that the Sauber is like the 4th or 5th team with the least amount of performance upgrades, which is insane. You remember the Sauber from 2024, and it was so trash that it felt like no amount of upgrades could ever do something to it. And this time around, they managed to score a lot of points with the 4th least upgraded car of the year. And although they are still 20 points away from the Racing Bulls, and it's still a lot of points, it's not possible to rule them out of 6th place in the championship, because a podium so random could flip things on their head, and with 3 races to go, 1 sprint, there are still a lot of points on the table, so we can only see what Sauber is going to do. But in my personal opinion, I believe it's much more likely that the Haas goes for a higher place than the Saubers. And these are the 5 teams that I believe still have a chance at the best of the rest. Although I believe that 5th place is almost impossible to take from Williams, it's not guaranteed, and 30 points can still be doable if something crazy happens in the last 3 races. But the 6th place is also a very important place for teams that can easily take it in the last 3 races, so it's all to play for these teams because it means a lot of money in their pockets. But before the end of the video, I want to make an honorable mention for one of the teams that has been fighting tooth and nail, that has brought the most amount of upgrades and performance upgrades this year, and that team is Red Bull. They've brought a staggering 50 total upgrades, circuit ones, reliability ones, and performance ones. I believe there were like close to 30 of performance upgrades, which is insane considering 2026 is just around the corner and a lot of things are going to change, but they really are fighting not only to get the 2nd place in the championship, but also to give Max all the tools that he needs to try and snatch that 5th championship from the hands of the McLaren and probably Norris. So as you see, in the next 3 weeks, there is a lot to be decided, a lot to be defined. The Constructors' Championship still has a lot to fight for, the Drivers' Championship still has a lot to fight for, and I can't look forward enough to it, and I hope you do too. And of course, I will cover everything that I can on the channel, so if you want to stay tuned, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.